Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about body wisdom. Our bodies are full of magic and wisdom if we can tune in and listen. This month, we'll be exploring how to create a more intimate connection with the unique language of our bodies and use it as a tool for deeper healing. So stay right here and let's hop into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everyone, it is Mary, and man, this is our final episode for this month's topic all around body wisdom. And I love that this is not only the final episode in this month's theme, but also the final episode for season 2. So for those of you that don't know, I've talked about it on the past couple episodes, but I'm taking a 2-month hiatus and I'll be back in September for season 3. But I thought that, gosh, there's no better way to end not only this month, but also this season with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Motley. And he has been on the show before, I think in 2019. Talking about the mind-body connection. He is an amazing doctor and friend of mine, and one of the most popular episodes that I have had to date. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I know I've had him on before, but we got to bring him back on and complete this conversation about body wisdom. But hopefully you have caught the other episodes in this month's theme. If you haven't, go back and listen to the previous episodes because it has been a tremendous month of fabulous information and guest experts. I started off talking about the 3 ways to honor your body's wisdom, kind of as the foundational episode in this topic, and looked at this thing called body wisdom and helped you kind of understand why we got disconnected from it, how we learned or adapted to disassociate from our bodies based on programming from our culture and our families, and just the way that we were raised to not trust or go to our bodies for its wisdom, and invite you sort of to come back into that place of going, maybe there is something here that I've been disconnected from, and I invite you to reconnect. So we talk about that in the first episode, the 3 ways to honor your body's wisdom. And then the second episode, I had Lindsley Brooks, my part-time co-host, come on the show, and we talked about connecting to your energetic body. And this was a really amazing conversation about the power of energy, our electromagnetic field. We get into the chakras, the energy systems of the body, and when those go unbalanced and get off their alignment, what might show up in your life. And so we kind of talk about different ways of balancing out your chakras, and that's definitely a cool introduction to this concept of energy and how our bodies use that to stay healthy and thriving. And then I had several guests, and like I said, this is the final guest, but I had Allie Wise on, and she is a trauma-informed coach, and we really talked about how trauma plays into our relationship with our body and how the body stores trauma. And so the episode is called Understanding Trauma and the Role of the Body. And she is brilliant. She really slows down the conversation and really talks about how we can get into the body to then heal some of that unprocessed trauma. And then last week I had Emily Francis on the show, who I have been following for years and have several of her books. And she gets into the part that the muscles, the tissues, the fascia, how they play in our processing of emotions. And she really talks about how the body not only knows how to heal itself, but how we can begin to use different techniques to bring about healing in the body where we find imbalances and symptoms represented in our tissues, our muscles, and our fascia. She is a brilliant author, and that episode is called Healing Ourselves Whole. We also talk a little bit about trauma in that episode as well. So it's been a full month. Typically, we only have 4 episodes in the month. This time we had 5 because we're ending with Dr. Motley. And let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Motley. And it's funny, like, he's Mott's to me. I always call him Mott's. We've been friends for a really, really long time, but he is one of the most brilliant people you will ever meet in your entire life. He lives here in Nashville, but he graduated with a BS in biology from Austin Peay State University in '97. And he also later completed his doctorate in chiropractic with a specialization in clinical kinesiology in '04. And so he is a master of Chinese medicine. Not only is he a clinical kinesiologist, but he brings about so many different modalities around the meridian system, around our organs and how they translate and process energy and chi and emotions. And he gets into just a wealth of information with his patients, whether it's allergy testing, sensitivities, nutritional therapy, obviously functional medical analysis, along with kinesiology, along with Chinese medicine. And I really would go as far as to say he is a genius, like for real. You'll get this when you hear him talk. So I know that was a long intro. I so appreciate you listening. And let's get into the episode with Dr. Motley. And again, remember that I will be back in 2 months, the beginning of September, for season 3. So I'm sure that I'll be sharing a couple replays and popular episodes to get you through the next couple months of the summer. But make sure to continue to follow me on Instagram at Mary G. Hyatt. Stay connected with me. I'm posting all kinds of great content and reels, and that's a place to stay connected while the podcast is on a little break. And then I'll be back in September. So, all right, here is my conversation with Dr. Motley. Hey y'all, it is Mary, and I am with my dear friend and genius, Dr. Christopher Motley. Hey buddy.
Hey, how are you? It's good to see you, girl.
I know, it's so good to see you. I feel like I get to see you often enough in the office, but this is like a treat because if I could just take my brain and put it inside of yours and download all the information that you have, like, oh my gosh, I would love life so much more. You know so much about all the things that I geek out about, which is why I'm pumped to have this conversation. And I shared this in your intro, which you have not heard because I did it separately, but your episode that we did back in, I think it was 2019, is still my most popular episode to date.
Oh, really?
On the podcast. Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yay. No,
I know.
I'm serious. I say that like a geek. Yay. But yeah, sure. Like, I mean, really great. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
I know.
Man. Appreciate it.
And I was like, okay, thinking about this month's theme of body wisdom, I couldn't think of a better ending to this month than having you on. And what I love about you is that you do have so much knowledge. Like, you're such an avid learner. You're constantly getting certified in, new modalities and deepening your knowledge. And like, you explain it in a way that the average person can digest it, which is really helpful when most of us have been so disconnected from the wisdom of our bodies. And we grow up in the West. We don't have a knowledge of how our body works together and energy. And I feel like you break it down really well. So I want to start with the basics because, well, actually, let's do this before we jump into that. Will you give everybody like a little Motley history? Because I gave you an intro, but I feel like it would be interesting to hear your story of how you got into this and like where you are now with all of your training and your learnings and like what you're geeking out about now. But give us a little history of how you got there.
You're right. It is kind of different about what I geek out now than when I first started. So when I first started to go into, I went to Chiropractic University, and I didn't have an idea when I was younger that I was really necessarily going into healthcare. So I had 3 thoughts, guys. I thought I was going to be like a jet pilot, or I was going to be an artist. I wasn't as good as my brother, so that's out the door. And I thought I'd do something with healthcare because I saw chiropractic and a naturopathic health work on my brother and my dad. My brother didn't have to do allergy shots. He didn't have to go down that route. My dad avoided back surgery. So it stuck in my head. So when I first went through high school, I had an idea that I wanted to do something with the biologies. I really liked neurology. And I love the idea of the brain and the interaction of the brain with the body. But I read some reports about how a lot of brain surgeons and neurologists have depression because their workload's too high or something of that sort. So I was like, well, I don't know if I want to face that, but I always want to do something with nerves. So fast forward into school. When I first started, I thought, like, when you go to chiropractic school, they think that, you're just, quote, popping bones or just doing those types of adjustments. And honestly, I've had such good benefit with it. I thought that's what my route would be.
Yeah.
So when I started to go into, when we say energetic or frequency medicine, the first semester leading into the second, I had an individual, a guy that became a friend of mine, sit beside me. He was telling me about kinesiology type work and acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Being half Asian, truly, I've heard about acupuncture, and I thought, well, that would be a really cool route to go. So I started to see the results of working in frequency medicine, which means you're measuring frequencies off the body digitally, like giving them a number, assigning the number to a condition. Okay, so that was like something that kind of raised my awareness, like heightened my interest. I still want to do the pop and snap because I'm a simple kind of guy. I just wanted to be plain and easy and simple.
Yeah.
But then people started to come to me in school and other friends that were doing the same techniques and asking us that they had different conditions while in school, and started to see results using frequency medicine. And I can explain a little bit more on that. But basically, you're using the electrical currents of the body to find areas that are dysfunctional, allowing the electricity to flow through the body. And we're going to discuss this later about the organs, but basically you're trying to find frequencies of problems, and the body's innate intelligence can actually heal it on its own. So when I got into that realm, I started to think this, they always say the body can heal itself, but it took it to a different level, because then it started to associate with Chinese medicine about how the emotions of the body and how the organ tissue of the body, how a parent's organ tissue can be passed on to you, of course, and you can mimic them, and their emotional status can actually program you in a certain way in your neurology and in your higher conscious, and that can create the physical problems. So that's what pushed me. Now, when I first started into practice, guys, I still was in that structural mode. I was like, give me ligaments, tendons, muscles, I'll fix that. But then I started to see that organs have a huge relationship on the functionality and the strength of a muscle. They do. Associated with the acupuncture system. You talked about fascial systems. You talked about how the body's connected. Well, that started me going, I still work with structure, totally.
Yeah. But
it started getting me into biochemistry. And then I was like, oh, well, I had to learn biochemistry because people were coming in with Lyme disease or any type of parasite infections. And then it started to go into, it started off like at the whole time I was still doing emotional work. People were coming in to get emotional work. So I had to learn more techniques in Chinese medicine for emotional techniques. All that to say, after 15 years, guys, I've been about 15, 16 years. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. And now paradigm shift to where you look more at the body. They say holistically. And I know people say you want to look at it as a whole unit. But once you start to understand, in my opinion, how classical Chinese medicine views how each organ is meant to process an emotion, and then you can find out through the element theory, which we can talk about how they are connected, you then can sort of determine how your emotional patterns are. And then that can determine how your organs respond. And that's where I'm at. I get dumbfounded sometimes, not because of, quote, like how much I know, but like reading a textbook, guys, because I have a textbook here and I look at it and I'm like, good heavens, that pattern that they had 6,000 years ago describes this person today who has pesticide problems. I mean, that's what dumbfounds me. And I love that about frequency medicine. Yeah. And that's where I'm at today. Do you find this girl I'm asking you this question too. It's like, you start to see how, when we talk about connection to God, connection to divine, higher conscious, that energetic flow that comes down is expressed physically. And I'm telling you how it goes through the organ system, manifest physical problems. And to me, I'm more intrigued than I ever have been before, because it makes me learn so much more. I have to read about it now because the patient wants an explanation. So that's where I'm at right now, is really trying to, it's all relationships, community of the organs. That's where I'm at right now.
I love hearing that story. I didn't know that about the path to now, like with being a jet pilot or an artist.
Yeah, I did.
I love that. I was like, oh, how fascinating. I could see you doing both of those things. But I too geek out about this. And I feel like the more that I learn, I feel like every little new piece of information that I gather, it's like a puzzle piece, sort of like creating this whole picture. And I, like, let's say we have a puzzle box of 500 pieces. It's like really literally like putting each one in there and, okay, the organs mean this, the tissues hold this, the meridian point shows this, our electromagnetic field, our connection to God, our thoughts and how they manifest. I mean, it's just, once you start kind of going down this path, it really is like mind-blowing moment after after moment. You're like, oh my God, well, that means that. And it's like all of a sudden there's that cascading effect where all the dots are connecting. And it's so cool.
Oh.
And I love it. Like I totally geek out over all this stuff.
I do
so
too.
much.
I think that whenever we both would talk about like, you talk about fascia and chakras, and we talk about like electrical pathways at times, like in the office, when you say like you get all these good aha moments in the cascade. This is the funny thing, guys. It's like there's not many times like I'll come in, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is. There's a lot of times where I've seen somebody for a while, and literally it's like you said in a movie.
Yeah.
I get a certain points in acupuncture, and then I go, then this whole role-playing movie goes in my head. It's like the very beginning scene where they came in, they told me their first symptom, they told me the things that happened to them when they were a kid, and I went, that is what it was like. And then you read the book, and I was like, I should have just read the textbook when they came in, and it would have been a lot easier, and so it's so mind-blowing how the cultures in the past didn't have our imaging devices, and for them to find the pathways in our bodies and the colors that are emitted from the body without like an imaging device. Yeah. I mean, that's the part that I love they say the mystical portion of medicine. I like that.
Yes, me too. I love it. I love it so much. And you mentioned so many things that like, I want to kind of go through one by one, because again, most people don't have this awareness, and yet there's a hunger, I feel like, based on our collective conscious, that's starting to rise, where we do want to know what's happening inside of our bodies. We want to know, like, you think about the trend of human design or the Enneagram or, some of these personality tests. We have this voracious appetite for wanting to know who we are, what's going on, what makes us up. And I think that understanding the body is kind of like the next thing that people are really desiring more knowledge of. And so you kind of like threw a couple of seeds, and you talked about the organs and how in Chinese medicine they connect to different emotions. So will you walk us through just that connection, and maybe even explain like the interplay of that and how it kind of shows up as symptoms in the body?
Truly. Okay. So I do want to make it for you guys out there. Like, I'm not trying to be over talking, trying to make it simplistic as possible. Yeah. So, when we talk about on podcasts, or you see information out there about how in Chinese medicine, even Ayurvedic, they'll talk about how certain organs are meant to process certain emotions. And that can be correlated to Western medicine about how certain organs process certain hormones. That's what organs do. They process certain hormones, and they have certain hormones that attach to the organ sites to make them do their function. Okay. So in Chinese medicine, you could say that we can go through the whole list, but like you could say the liver and the gallbladder, for example, help process anger or frustration, indecisiveness, being overwhelmed. Those are big liver gallbladder issues. Now, if you look at it from a Western standpoint, we're saying that the liver is meant for us to detoxify toxins and help us to break down hormones, help to clarify our blood. If you don't do that properly, if you can't recycle or break down hormones, what happens? Hormones back up into your body. You store them in your fat cells, and they can be in your bloodstream. And if you have toxins and hormones that are not processed running around in your bloodstream, what do? You can get angry. You get frustrated because you're toxic. So the Chinese medicine did not have like the way to, examine blood in that manner, but that's the expression of the physicality of what's happening within the organ. Yeah. So when they say you're meant to process anger and frustration, literally methylation in our world is MTHFR. And this is how technical, guys, I'm just saying. MTHFR would say that you're supposed to be able to use your liver to help you with the process of breaking down serotonin and dopamine. That's an example. Yeah. Serotonin and dopamine are help your feel-good hormones. If you can't break them down, they'll back up and cause ADHD, OCD, ADHD. And so you can have anxiety and depression back up because your liver's not working. And what are some of the main emotions that they show with the liver? I get depressed. That's one of them. I get indecisive. I don't know what to think. See how they sort of correlated with the organs. So you can have that. You can have the lungs, the large intestine. They help process grief and sadness. Yeah. You have the spleen and the stomach, which helps process worry or ruminating thoughts, thinking too much obsessively about something. You ever hear about people that have a tight stomach? They say, oh, goodness, I got a knot in my stomach. It's why? It's because you get too much worry in your body, and all the cortisol basically shunts to your arms and your legs, and it draws blood away from your stomach. It slows down digestion. You see how it sort of correlates. And then kidneys are fear and bladder's fear, or you can say paralyzed will, I can't move forward. So you start to have all these organs in relationship trying to work with each other. And this is where we talk about the correlation. Yeah. Chinese medicine would also call it, and we talked about the elemental theory. So when I talk to a patient, if I say, okay, Mary, for instance, if you came in and I can use myself as an example, if I found that you had a kidney problem, if you had chronic UTIs, or if you had a chronic bladder infection, in Chinese medicine, it represents the water element. So the Chinese would say, like, the elements are meant to help create a cycle, or they destroy the cycle to keep it in balance. So the water in the creation cycle feeds the wood, which is the wood element, which is the liver and the gallbladder. So the hydration of the kidneys, the water, the balance, which means you could retain water, you could pee all night and urinate all night and have to have really bad urges to use the restroom when you have a UTI or a kidney infection when you don't even know it. That can drain you of fluids, and then your liver and gallbladder get dehydrated, and you need oxygen. Isn't that crazy? I know it gets a little too far-fetched. I mean, too crazy, but it goes up into the gallbladder. It's supposed to help it in the liver to grow. And what does the wood element do? It helps you grow ideas. It helps you make decisions. It helps you go forward. And so you have this relationship where it's building the liver, but then the liver is supposed to go feed the heart and the small intestine with wood. Wood feeds fire. They're fire elements. And so the fire element is supposed to get that in that decision making. Let's make a decision. And then the fire burns with passion. So I have passion to go do what I want to do. And I got this idea. Let's do it. That's the thyroid, the heart, the adrenals. But think about it. If you had a weak kidney because you had lots of fear in your past, or your parents passed it on to you, and you got kidney infections chronically when you're a kid, the water doesn't feed the wood doesn't feed the fire. Wow. So you lose passion. All because it went back to your kidney. Wow. And see, what I would do as a practitioner, guys, this is me. I would look at a thyroid or adrenal, and the first thing I think is, like, we need to put you on something for your thyroid and adrenals. That's me. People want to know their body, like you just said, and understand. And then you go, no, the connecting dot is go back down the elemental chart and go, were you 5 years old when you had a kidney infection or something of that sort? And they go, yeah, I've had kidney infections all my life, or UTIs. Fix the kidney, restore the water and the fluid where it goes up and feeds the wood element, the liver, it'll feed the fire. And you start seeing people, that's that interplay. But there's also a destructive cycle too. This is for all you manics out there. Okay, that's a joke. When individuals have, like, if you say, like, people say, I get over anxious, right? Yeah. People say, I get really anxious and I've just been real jittery lately. What's going on? I go, well, if it was, let's use a kidney example again. If the kidney is really low in energy, that kidney element is water. The destructive cycle is called the water is supposed to be junk on the fire element to calm it down. Your kidneys are supposed to put fluid in the body, keep your heart from getting too hot, and your thyroid. But if your kidneys are weak, your thyroid, if you're not careful, and your heart will try to bump up in the meantime, because the water's not getting into the wood, but it's basically saying, oh, there's no draw or catch on the fire. The fire can keep burning hot. So you'll find people with weak kidneys who burn hot in their thyroid and they're in their heart, and they'll have heart palpitations. They'll have hyperthyroid bleeding, overactive, and they'll get manic and they'll get anxious. And so you'll think, well, that's all thyroid. I'm like, it went back to their kidney. I'm not saying the kidney's everything, guys. I mean, that's the example about the relationship and the physical manifestation in clinical medicine. Like you say, oh, so they have hyperthyroidism or hypo, or they have, heart palpitations. My heart, my mind really doesn't necessarily always go to, like, heart problems. And there is heart problems. They'll accumulate. My thoughts always go, find the other element that's the destructive cycle or the constructive and work backwards. And you'll usually find something that creates that. So it's really, like you say, nerding out. It's total investigation, girl. And I know I'm talking too much, but it really like, I use myself as an example. We talked about this right before we got on. Like when I was a kid, guys, I fell into a window well, and I fell in a window well when I was 4. And I think it was 4 or 5 in Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, where I lived. And the window well caught me right in the inside of my thigh, right beside my pubic bone. And then I just started peeing blood because it ruptured a ureter, right, that went down in my bladder. Wow. To this day, like when I had Lyme disease when I was like I had it since I was like a teenager, but it really hit me in my 30s. But I always had a swollen kidney on my right side. On the right side, it always swelled up and always got fatigued. Now get this. Even at that age, if my kidney was not necessarily a fearful kidney, like I didn't have a lot of fear that came in from my parents, but the injury caused a problem, then the infections that I was supposed to be filtering out accumulated in my right kidney. And that's why it swelled up all the time. But it then decreased the activity of my kidney, the good activity, which means I didn't process fear that well. So then what does that do? It makes me fearful. And so I can get like any little thought, I get paralyzed. I was like, oh, I can't move forward. What if this happens? What if that happens? And I noticed that in my life. And so that kidney fatigue didn't feed the wood element. And so what happened is new ideas don't come to my brain. So when I started cleaning out my kidneys, I started noticing that my fearful thoughts, my night terrors, I started having night terrors and night sweats went away. Wow. But then my liver numbers got better just from that 5 years. So you have to look back in your history. But when you see those things with the patients, you know, when they come in and you go, I mean, I could tell, like, I had patients come in literally like with plantar fasciitis, and I know I'm just taking too much on this story. People would come with plantar fasciitis and they have constant foot pain, and they've told me like I have a L5 disc that never gets better. And finally, after using more elemental theory, I was like, oh my word, bladder meridian and kidney meridian run down the legs and go through the calves and into the feet. And you're asking their history. I was like, did you have chronic UTIs? And they're like, oh, all the time. Had UTIs when I was a kid. And they think since they don't show it in their urine, it's not there anymore. I was like, no, most infections will stick on the walls in your bladder and your kidney, and it will not come through your urine. So it's still there. And then they like, you have chronic plantar fasciitis from that. You fix their bladders and kidney and they'll go away.
Dang.
I'm sorry. I just want
to no, I love it. I think the takeaway for me is just like, oh my gosh, like this is the wisdom of the body, right? Like it's always wanting to balance itself out. And we talk about the elements. We're talking earth, wind, fire, and water. We're talking about, I'm just like breaking it down, just like to not bypass that stuff.
No, I love it because it makes it simpler because I just went too crazy. I love it. Keep going.
No, but I think it's like helpful to know, like when one is deficient, the others will come in and try to create balance and homeostasis in the body. So they'll become overactive, causing an imbalance in themselves to create more balance and like totality, or vice versa, you know, like if they're overactive, you know, so it's just, I think that's helpful to know, like the body's job is always to find balance.
It is totally like,
even if it comes out in symptoms that you're like, you feel like you're sick or you feel like you have these issues, that still is the body's way of trying to balance itself out, which is kind of crazy.
It's like whenever I always think it's like adaptations, right? So when we talk about like, if you think your symptoms like high blood pressure is like, oh, I got to fix high blood pressure. And I'm like, you may not have to. It is the body's response to you having a deficiency in another element. Like the water feeds the wood feeds the fire makes earth because it burns the wood down. And then the earth is turned into metal because it makes minerals. And then the minerals go back into the water to make it mineralized. So when you start to look at it in that pattern, you start to go, which organ feeds the next? Like any type of condition, you can start to explain. You know, I have cholesterol issues. Well, go see if the kidney's feeding the wood, the liver to make cholesterol. If not, it's a wood element. What would chop up the wood? An axe, which is made out of metal. So what if the liver is acting too hot? You go to to the metal element, which is the lung and the large intestine. So then you go, is there something going on in my large intestine that's slowing down my liver? Because it's supposed to, to keep an eye on my liver. So if they're sick, then they'll basically will not keep the liver from functioning properly. And if we look on the cycle, guys, like let's say your large intestine, you don't eliminate well from 5 to 7 a.m. That's when you're supposed to have a bowel movement. You can also go into different types of elemental theory and like look at the 24-hour cycle periods, how like 12-hour opposite organs affect the opposite 12-hour organ. And that's another story. But you are right. Like the body knowledge, girl, it's like how the body tries to balance itself. It's complete adaptation, the yin and the yang. Every time the body you think it's wrong, it's literally, like you said, trying to keep itself balanced.
Yeah.
And it's expressing symptoms to give you the knowledge to say, this element's out of whack. You got to go do it.
Well, and I think that like so often we're so easy to blame the body. Like my body is just doing this thing, and we don't pause to think about how it could be, how that symptom, how that high blood pressure, how that hypothyroid, how that plantar fasciitis could be giving you a signal to the root issue, that's actually not the root, that's the defense mechanism, or that's the adaptation trying to right itself. And there's two things I want to talk about in this. So one of the things you keep mentioning, and I don't want to go too quickly by this because I think this is an interesting concept of you have mentioned several times of generational imbalances that get passed down, like from your father who maybe had issues with fear, or, with the kidney imbalance there, that some of this stuff isn't our own, that it's passed down through generations. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that, to kind of help us understand that sometimes it's not our own stuff. Like sometimes this is our parents, grandparents, etc.
Yeah. It's whenever you have we call even miasm fields. Miasms are they talked about Dr. Hahnemann, who talked about how you could have a genetic predisposition to have the conditions of your parents, and that could be passed down, as they say, energetic blueprints on your DNA. And they say that DNA and chromosomes basically hold electrical charges, and it's shown they hold electrical charges, and vibration patterns are in DNA. So a lot of your DNAs are basically big conductors. The proteins in your DNA are conducting electricity all day, all the time. Now, this is the thing. I tell my patients, when you have a problem, you say it's not your own. I have to say, girl, I think a lot of it is that we have such tendencies, and we don't realize that we do absorb our parents, and I'm not blaming our parents. We all have our things and such, but we don't realize how much of our expressions are heavily influenced by the emotional patterns that are passed even through DNA energetically and physically. For instance, if I say my nose looked like my dad's, or my eyes looked like my mom's, it's hard for some individuals in our Western culture to believe that the organs that you got passed down from your ancestors look like theirs. If you, I hate to say it, cut them open and looked and say, oh, you have the same size and shape and the same atrial valves in your heart as your grandma. Why? Because certain portions of their DNA, for some reason, chose you to be developed within you. That makes sense. You could have had something from a great-great-grandfather that influenced the shape of your heart to be just like theirs. Generationally, think about this. If your grandparents went under high amounts of stress in a stressful situation, and they were bombarded, and their heart was beating all the time with high, basic fight or flight, and their liver was pumping out hormones like cortisol, and their adrenals were getting hit crazy, and you got a portion of DNA from them to mimic the size and shape of that organ from them, you'll resonate with them. Wow. To the point that if some individuals, this is how far, not it's far-fetched, it's just how far it can actually go. Yeah. When we think about if you're a parent, let's say you're my parent, or my parent passed on to me defective or weak kidney tissue. Now, if you're around your parent, and it could be generational, I'll explain it in a bit, but if you're around your parent, and your parent, remember, is a tuning fork, and your parent, they have their kidney tissue problem, they pass it to you, they're operating in a fearful program in their higher conscious. It's literally a program that's making them vibrate, and it finds your kidney tissue that has the same structure, they match. Yeah. And that wave pattern, acoustic or electromagnetic, will make it vibrate. So then you go, what happened? Their vibration passed to yours. You absorb it, and it amplifies the tone in your kidneys, and you get more fear while theirs dissipates, because that's how resonance works. So they die down, and you absorb it, and you go, why do I feel so bad when I'm around my parents? You're fearful because they didn't maybe they mean to, but they passed it to you. And I do say that they say energetic blueprints. They say that in the ether, right? That when somebody passes to the next life, or the energy is still in the ether, in wherever it may be, even in heaven, they say there's still a resonance with the ancestor. I've heard this, that how they resonate, even though they're not present, still resonates with the tissue they passed to you. So you could still feel what they felt back in generations past. And anything that reminded your body of what they experienced in the past, like you go into a situation, oh, my great grandfather must have went through this when he was in the war. It triggers you because you literally you're resonating with them. So they say the sins, in the scripture, sins of the father passed down, but they're showing more evidence about how proteins are conductors. And these proteins patterns could come from many ancestors, 6, 7 generations back. And you can respond to all the things that they had memory of because it's in the proteins. They have a memory of it. It's trapped. And so anything that reminded your great grandfather of something can make you trigger that genetic expression. So you literally have all these generational emotions passing down, all the memories coming down.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? I don't know.
It's so crazy. And I'm just like having these moments of thinking about just the concept of resonance. I know you talk about this a lot. Like to me, the picture that comes to my brain is like a mirror. You're like another way of describing this would be like, reflecting back and forth, and you're seeing the same image, and and you really create like twin DNA, in that sense.
That's great.
And so there's just, I think about that concept of like the tuning fork. Yes. Like that resonance, you're picking up on the energetic frequency there, but also like there's a mirroring that is taking place. And to take it one step farther, it's so normal for us to think about, okay, when we're around our family, oftentimes we easily get triggered. Sometimes like the traits in ourselves that we don't love about ourselves, like come out. I always say like, what is it when you get around family? You go back in these weird patterns, and you're like, all of a sudden you're a child again. And like, you might be like a fully functioning adult and you like step foot in your family function and you're like, what's wrong with me? Give me the gin and tonic, and it's like, yes, please. Because you're like in a different frequency. There's a different conversation. Your cells are having a different conversation in that moment.
Yes.
But when I think about this also though, with friends, like the people that you spend time with, like who is it? Is it Tony Robbins who says like, you're the average of the 5 closest people to you. But if you look at that from an energetic standpoint, like a tuning fork, and you're resonating and you're vibrating on the same frequency as the people around you, like forget the family part for just a second, but like your friends or even just people you're in an environment with, like in your workspace, that's kind of crazy too. So I'm wondering, like, can that same tuning fork mirroring effect, like let's say somebody that you're around has some sort of a weak organ or issue going on, can you match that? Or is it just because it's
yes,
down
completely.
From DNA? Wow.
Yes. And I think that's why sometimes, we have good friendships and people that may not be too good for us. And I think even if they're not necessarily family, I think when you talked about fascia, we talked about yoga and how like different body postures create certain energetical patterns around the body. Yeah. It happens the same within the organ tissue. Now, if you have a frequency that's nearly identical or very close to the waveform, that's how frequency and resonance would work. Like, so let's say you had a friend that did have weak lung tissue, or they had a resonance of grief that was stuck in their body. Now, when you try to identify with them, and let's say you had a minimal amount of grief, we all experience grief, but it'll say you have healthy lungs, and your healthy lungs are able to process the grief, properly. Now, if you have any type of frequency or any type of wavelength that would be similar or to the same size and shape, even on a minute scale, to the person who's grieving, they do send out signals all day through their tissue. That's what they're doing because they're grieving. And then you may feel it. That's why you feel like, man, when I'm around that person, I just feel like so sad and I grieve too. Now, when it happens to that extent, the problem is that it increases the amplitude, like the actual height of the wave in you. So the patient feels so good being around you and telling you their grief is because all day, like you basically, their tuning fork is doing this. And as it dies down, you literally have picked up the pace and you've actually started to resonate for them. Yeah. So when you start to have a group of friendships, I always tell my patients, I'm like, it's great to be around individuals and help them through their problems. But there is a time where you, like we've talked about this, like you have to have a boundary or have to be self-aware and know, is that mine? Like, why do I feel so grieving? If you have to ask yourself that question and that's not your normal, somebody's trying to resonate with you and they're identifying with you. Now, it's great to be that person for a lot of people, but we know this. We, like you say, the average. I am really conscious about who I have to hang around with, who I hang around with. Are you like that too?
Because it totally affects me.
Toxic around somebody. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And I'm just thinking like, I just had this like light bulb moment where I was like, is this empathy? Like, is what you're talking scientifically when we say empathy, is this what it is? Like, is that what's happening inside of our bodies? Like,
Yep.
we're feeling other people's emotional pain. We're feeling their imbalance. And last week we had Emily Francis on the show, and she was talking about transference.
What?
And
Yes.
yeah, it was amazing. So she was talking like,
Yes.
in massage therapy, like she might massage someone and then they have a migraine headache. And then by the end, they're like, oh my God, my head feels amazing. And then she would have the migraine headache, like it would be the transference of that issue. And
yes,
that's what it is. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like,
it is transference.
It's transference. Yeah.
You become the remedy. Like I say, like, okay, so it's like when people use homeopathics or essential oils, which are so effective and they're strong and powerful, it's because the oil or the homeopathic basically is trying to mimic the condition of the person. So the person will resonate with the drop of oil, the homeopathic, and send the energy that's resonating the problem within you to that oil, and then transferring all the energy so that the problematic energy starts to fade away. And then it doesn't send a signal to your brain anymore. So your brain doesn't respond to it anymore. So your body calms down. When you're empathic and you do that to somebody else, like you're like literally around somebody who's like, Mary, I love hanging around you. When I get there, I feel like capital. Like
you're
every
like, well,
time
I feel like shit. So we got to figure this out.
My body doesn't feel too good right now. And when you start to realize that, you go, well, the problem with, and I say problem with empathic, the problem we have is empathic individuals. If you're empathic, think about it this way. Anytime like the homeopathic or the oil absorbed the frequency, it gains memory. Anytime you're empathic with other individuals, you gain a huge memory log of all the grief. Like you can contact 10 people with grief. So you have vast knowledge of grief. And so you'll just start to attract more grief if you don't ground it out. And we know that, like, you have to use oils, you have to be out in the earth, you have to use different types of techniques to help push those negative things into the ground. But I always think it's the accumulation that transfers, like getting a migraine. I think it's amazing. Even body posture. You ever watch your friends? Do you ever, like, anybody out there when you're like around somebody and you have different body postures, positions? Some people are so real open and stuff, and they're empathic, and they know instinctively, like you do. I know you know instinctively what body posture will be the perfect antenna for that person to send their energy to you, because you instinctively do it, Mary. You like that. You go, oh yeah, you know how to. And why? Because your body creates a huge antenna, but then it just sort of absorbs. Yeah. Okay. But then I'm like, I'm only willing to absorb so many people's energy. Like you have, the part we have to get at.
And I feel like people that do this work, and just anybody who is sensitive to other people's energy or is empathic, like you do have to really watch how open you stay. Like, well, obviously we want to be open. We want to lead with love. We want to be a safe place for people. And there's also like a space of having a really open heart with really amazing boundaries and a great fence. And I think that energetically we have to realize, like, we can stay open and have boundaries at the same time. And just knowing, like, I can be here and listen, but there's a difference between being here and absorbing and being here and like pushing, giving what's yours back to you. And I think that, like, there are so many different practices of taking care of ourselves energetically. What are some of yours? Like, do you do that before you see patients?
Yeah. Even more now. Every single morning, like I get up now. I used in the past I didn't do as much, but I do as much Qigong as I can do. Like it practices to actually do certain types of movements to build enough Qi life force. What I mean is, like, people always exercise their muscles, which is practicing building tissue. Build up electricity. You can do Tai Chi and Qigong and say grounding. But I really believe, like, with that kind of effect with interactions, I realize that as, like, I'll see plenty of people in a day, and I realize that if I grounded out a lot of people, that's why I'm saying ground them out and I absorbed a bit. I have to go out and I say, like, get in contact with as much of organic material as you can be. Because it's just, people think it sounds nerdy, but it is simple conduction. Like, you do have to go out, like you say, touch trees, be on the ground is likewise, because you need organic material to transfer all the positive ionic effect, which can be very detrimental to your health. And whenever I do Qigong in the morning, for my first practice is to get up in the morning and drink, like, a nice, not warm water, but a nice room temperature water, maybe 2 glasses. And the reason being, if you already have weak kidneys, which I had in the past, you may urinate a lot because it's not strong enough to hold the water. Yeah. But if you get strong enough to where you start to put, even if you pee it out early, drink some water, and I use like different types of Qigong movements. And what I'll do is I'll do that for about 10 to 15 minutes every morning. And then, like you say, meditate. My meditation, when we pass on energy, remember, in my opinion, whenever somebody's telling you you're an empathic person and they're giving you their information, and you, in a sense, become the remedy for them because you start to absorb, there has to become a part where you have to ask yourself, because you say lead with love. The part that's hard for me is that if I could be a block from their healing, like literally, I could actually be like we talked, you could be a block to their healing. And it's like, why? It's like, because in Chinese medicine, we've talked about this. If the organs, this is how it can get to like the spiritual aspect. They say that every part of the organs, like the hun, the shen of the mind, it's the mind of the organ. What they say is that there is a divine connection to divine, where your higher conscious is supposed to be connected to the divine, and the divine is passing energy to make you be more aware that you're acting in a higher conscious with divine, to be aware of your organ systems. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the practice would be, when you meditate, is like you're allowing that higher energy to go to each organ and to process them out. Yeah. Because if they don't do this, they'll keep using you as like a tuning fork. And what happens is I had to step back with some patients and go, no, these are the practices that you need to incorporate too. And even me pass it on to higher divine, like this is all that, because if you do, you'll just burn yourself out. Now, the beauty of it is that whenever I'm practicing, guys, and you guys are empathic, Mary, if you experience this, the beauty of body knowledge, and people want to investigate, what I love is that, let's say I absorb a ton of grief. Yeah. And it's not rocket science. If I say, I'm absorbing grief, but if I cough more, this is the beauty of it. I cough more. I cry unexpectedly. I have chest pains where I can't expand and get full oxygen. Or maybe I don't get a low oxygen reading. Or I don't sleep well between the hours of 3 to 5 a.m., which is the time of day that the lungs are supposed to be strongest and healing. Those are the physical signs your body gives that means you may be absorbing too much. So you can be there for people all day, which I love. I love being with my friends. But I know my little signs and symptoms from Chinese medicine and go, okay, this is good, but I pushed it because I can feel it. And that's your body saying, done. You love them. Just take a break.
Need a boundary.
So, need a boundary. Like the fences, I love that. But to me, it's like, those are my things. Meditations, Qigong, touch plenty of organic material. Yeah. But I've really been trying to practice that transference of energy to me, like through, and allowing the energy to come down and fix my organs as well. But when you transfer, you actually feel it if you really get good at it. And it's current, guys. It's electrical currents. It's electrical energy, electromagnetic spectrum. Yeah, it's really good.
No, I'm with you. And you really do feel the difference. Like when that is part of your regular practice, it's like you're so grounded, literally, but it's like there's just this ability to stay centered in a whole other way than if you're just out there, just, absorbing everything and not taking a second to check in and clear out, transmute, reground. And for the last little bit of time that we have, I would love to just touch on, because for the lay person where this is like obviously not their study, they're not, reading all the things that you're geeking out on. They don't have all the training that you have. Like, I mean, I will say one of the things that is always comforting to me that you always remind me of is that the body knows how to heal itself. So yes, there are things that we can do to help the body along, but like the body will find its balance, and so that's comforting to me. But if we do want to help it along in a way, like let's say somebody isn't coming into your office and seeing you, but just at home, how can we begin to self-diagnose and to, in a way, treat ourselves, or, I know this is like, there's like so many ways we could go with this, but I just would love, kind of like what your basic prescription would be.
Usually I don't, and guys, I don't want to sound like too complicated, but it to me though, learning even like the 12 is 12 guys, 12 like small points, but it's a little bit of study. But once you understand a little more about how it tells you about your body, you actually get really intrigued with it. Like you actually get really interested with patients. There's a book by Deborah Bleeker I've recommended. It's called Acupressure Made Simple. Nice. And she has really good explanations about, points in the book about different points. Now, what I usually do, this is a simple thing. I call it, like we talked about tapping or something. What I like to do is tell the patient is learn, if you can, on a Chinese, the Ori cycle. Maybe this is too much, but Ori cycle is the circadian rhythm of your body. So it tells you how each organ feeds energy to the next. It's not woo-woo energy. It's literally pathways in the body through the muscle tissue and the fascia where one organ area is trickling electricity slowly to the next next one. You learn the 12-hour cycle. And then you learn what we call the beginning and ending points of the connections between the organs. And that what that means is one organ will pass off the energy to the next organ line, the next tube of energy, the next tunnel of energy. Yeah. If you go through practice and you go to each one of the little beginning and ending points, and you can use pressure, you can use little vibration devices, but you start to record which points are the most tender. So if I say the lung is the most tender, I then go back in my memory bank, go to the Ori cycle and say, when is the lung, what time is the lung supposed to be most active? 3 to 5 a.m. Then you study the action of the lungs. And then you go, well, I don't get good sleep at 3 to 5 a.m. Lung points tender. Then I go read a book. There's a great book by Dr. Michael Leibowitz called Body Restoration Book. It has a clear explanation of what all the organs do. I read it every day, literally. Go to the lungs, read what the lung does in a 3-page thing. And you think, well, that's too much reading. I was like, no, it'll explain to you your symptoms. And then you'll say, what emotion is with the lungs? See, you got your biochemistry, you got your time of day. You treat the points, you'll notice that the points that were really tender at the beginning start to fade away. Maybe new ones pop up. That's layering. We know that. You get rid of the top layer, the next one comes up and say, does it ever stop? I'm like, it doesn't stop. Well, you'll finally find that there's only 1 or 2 points that are always tender. And those are your chronic emotional and genetic problems that come from your parents. So if you got all this done, you say, my kidneys keep showing up, go to the kidney points, read about the kidneys, then start taking herbals to help support. So I hope that wasn't too much, guys.
No, I love that.
Well, it's really, really good to be informed about how it flows.
It is fascinating. And I think it's like, we get to be our own doctor. I mean, I think that's ultimately, to me, the next wave of human consciousness is to be, to heal ourselves, and this is obviously, if you're listening for this in the first time, it's like, oh my God, this is like so much information, just even understanding that this is going on in our bodies for right now is enough, because that will then lead you to the next step. And little by little, you'll get these little puzzle pieces, to make this beautiful puzzle. But you don't have to know it all today or tonight or buy all the books. It's like just this intriguing, hopefully is intriguing your just, I don't know, like appetite for going, oh, maybe there's more to this than I just, my dad had heart issues. And so I have heart issues and I got to make sure I, eat better. It's like there may be more to this. And I do want to point out one thing. When Dr. Motley was talking about the points in the body, you're referring to the meridian points, right?
The meridian points. Sorry. Yes. The meridian points.
And so I love that. Even just Googling like meridian points, because I think sometimes we think, well, I don't have an issue with my lungs because I breathe just fine, or I'm not feeling any grief. And I think what's really amazing is that, these meridian points connected to the organs, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm really like testing myself here. But they run through the body, right? Like highways within the body. So you might have, I'm totally making this up, right? But like you might have
it's great.
A lung issue that's, down by your ankle, for example. That you're, I don't know if that's the correct place, but I'm just saying it may not be anywhere near the physical lungs themselves, for example, or you might not experience issues with breathing or asthma or congestion in the lungs. It might be something that you think is totally unrelated. But if you look at the meridian points on the body, you start to go, oh my gosh, like there's a line that is the bladder line. There's the line that's the kidney line. There's the lung line. Like you start seeing how this traces in the body. And so that's what, when Dr. Motley is talking about that, it's like he's talking about these meridian points where you can go and access and put a little bit of pressure, like, your thumb or your pointer finger pressing into that acupuncture point and massage. That's what he's saying, like treating ourselves. And that's creating that electrical charge. That's creating energy and upping that level of chi in that area that translates into the organ. So I just kind of want to like give like an elementary moment.
That was great.
Is that right? God, did I get it right?
It's totally like whenever as Mary described it, the cool thing about it is like when you don't think you have a problem
Yeah.
And you think, and then you'll go, when you look at the point, do you ever do this? You'll literally I'll treat people and I go, well, I think you have spleen issues. And they go, oh my goodness, why does that hurt? And I was like, well, that's the spleen. Is it anywhere near the spleen? No, your spleen's right here, but the energetic pathway runs near it and goes all the way down the leg. So people go, well, I have bunions. Bunion, because that little electrical pathway goes right through that big toe joint. So you could have a spleen issue representing its area like a joint inflammation, which could be a bunion. Yes, it's gout or uric acid, but the spleen could be infected. So you press the point, and this is the beauty of how body talks. The body is like going in the future. It's giving you not predestined, but it's giving you information about what could happen. Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. It's like you say, well, I don't have gallbladder problems. You press and you're like, well, did your parents have? Yeah, all my family got their gallbladders removed. It's like, well, you could get the same if you keep going the same pattern.
Yeah.
So you use the points, not only give you present, but it's like future information too. That's and so cool. You can find I just love looking and finding certain areas of acupuncture points all along those little areas. So I always tell a patient, like you just said, where's your problem? Where do you hurt? Okay, go online, look up acupuncture points around the shoulder. Press those points and find which one's most tender. Find the organ it's related to. And then you'll go, oh, that organ could cause shoulder problems. You would not know, guys, how much frozen shoulders come from parasites in the large intestine. Why?
That's crazy.
Because all the large intestine goes to the shoulder. Those are the beautiful examples of how Chinese medicine works. And that is the wave of the future. Like with frequency medicine, it will.
It's the wave of the past and the wave of the future.
It is totally. That's great.
It's so ancient. And I would also recommend to follow Dr. Motley on YouTube and his blog and his Instagram, because he's literally pumping out videos with all this information on the reg, and it's amazing, and it will help continue to boost your knowledge. And find a Chinese practitioner. You don't have to do this all along. There's amazing people available in every city, everywhere.
Yes.
So that's the encouraging news.
That is encouraging news. And I want you to say, where's your connection? So when I put this on mine, what's your contact, Mary? What's your feeds and such?
Yeah. So
say it for me. Yeah.
MaryHyatt.com. And my Instagram is Mary G, like Grace, Mary G Hyatt. And Chris, where can everybody find you and connect with you more?
I am just at Dr. Motley on Instagram and on Facebook, usually in drmotley.com. You can spell it out or say DR, but everything mostly is spelled out, Dr. Motley. And you can jump on and give me a message. I do virtual consults to help some individuals. I do certain days where I do virtual. So some people send me messages, and we do still treat in the office, and I do the virtual consults, which have been really helpful for individuals just who need a bit more, I say, guidance about some answers or possibilities. So that's where I'm at, guys. If you guys ever have any questions, just hit me up. But that's where we're at. And I'm so thankful to be able to talk with you about this, girl. It's great.
Oh my gosh. And have you done your webinar yet? I know you've been talking about a webinar.
Oh yeah. I'm going to do a webinar. I think it's coming on July 10th, maybe I guess July 10th or 11th, but I think it's July 10th, but I will put that on Instagram, and we're going to have more. It's because a lot of times, I think what I'm going to do is do a bit about gut health, but I want to tie in about the emotional aspects of how your emotional body can actually cause problems in your gut, and how your gut can cause emotional problems. I mean, how it can cause the spiritual problems too. So we're going to do that.
So definitely stay connected so that you guys can join that webinar, and I'll make sure to link to everything in the show notes so that you have it. But man, this was amazing. This is the perfect ending to season 2, the perfect ending to this month's topic of body wisdom. Chris, thank you. You are amazing.
Thank you so much,
thank you.
You're the angel. You're an angel. So,
thank you.
But I appreciate it so much. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Y'all, go follow Chris. Go follow me. Tag us as you repost this episode in your story. Let us know what you got out of it. What was mind-blowing to you? What were those light bulb moments? We want to hear about it. But until next season on the show, which will be in September. So I'm taking a 2-month hiatus. I'll be back in September. But until then, remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all in a couple months. Bye. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.